So, you know, it's been very interesting since morning. We've been having different reactions from political leaders, from lawyers, from Kenyans, some saying, the country needs to move forward. Others are saying, in fact, I remember one specific lady saying, maybe President Uhuru Kenyatta needs to get a hold of NASA leader Raila Odinga and they sit together, just the two of them, and then figure out a way to move this country forward. So one of the individuals who've been very vocal, especially on social media, on what is currently happening in the country has been Professor James Ole Kiapi. Remember, he's a former presidential candidate, and he's been having a steady stream of words of reason online over the political developments in the country. Let's speak to him in studio, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today on KTN Prime.
Thank you, Linda.
So there's all these idea that maybe where we are as a country right now, the Supreme Court has upheld the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. NASA is saying they don't recognize it. It's illegitimate. Where do we go from here? How do we move this country forward?
First of all, we need to understand and recognize that an election means a whole lot for people. Because people invest in election, not just in terms of money. They invest in election spiritually, they invest in election emotionally, they invest in election because election represents aspirations of people. And so a lot of people, in 2002, we were all very excited because in a sense, the whole country participated in bringing about the leader, Mwai Kibaki, then. So this election we've been divided, not just during this election. This division has been moving on from 2007, lingering and the political formation changed a little bit, but there is that deep underlying division. 2013, there was a quiet, let's move on. But again, it didn't necessarily resolve the divisions that existed. So now come to this election. Obviously, the legal process is over because I don't see a legal way of reversing what the Supreme Court did, rule today, upholding the president's election of the second one of
26th October.
26th of October.
Yeah.
Now, NASA, recall, did not participate in that election deliberately because, and for them, the reason was that they thought that the level playing field was not fair. So they withdrew, whether officially or not. I'm just stating facts. And right now, we have a message from NASA side that they don't even recognize what has happened.
And the only dialogue they will have is a dialogue.
They are indifferent, and that the only dialogue they want is
on how to have a free, fair, credible election next year.
Next year in February. And Jubilee, on the other hand, it is over, it's finished, dusted. Let us swear in the president, and let's move on. Now, that's really where the problem is, because there is really, in a very serious sense, a moving on. Yes, in legal terms, the president, of course, can form his government, and he can go on and, implement programs. But there is a need, and I don't know how it will be done, there is a need to bring about some sort of resolution. Because people are fighting, even in the social media.
Social media is crazy.
When I talk about dialogue, the Nazarite hit back very fast and say, time for dialogue is over, it's time for secession. They want another country. And the jubilants, on the other hand, say, wait a minute, don't even imagine. There is no time for nusu mukate. And I'm trying to make a very serious matter, light. The issue is the country is very, very, very divided. And in my view, what is really needed is a higher level of magnanimity on the part of President Uhuru Kenyatta. He needs to come out very clearly and call Raila Odinga and say, wait a minute, we can fight this thing forever. We can fight for the next 5 years, but it's not going to help us.
The two have to find a way of sitting together and talking.
The two have to find a way of sitting together. And Linda, I want to repeat this. It is not only Kenya that is going through a crisis of sorts. And again, let us not pretend that there is no crisis, because there is. Many other countries, historically and even in the present time, have had crises. But it is always the call of leadership. It is always, ultimately, the leaders who must call the people back and then come out with something that people can live with. I don't really think that we're going to have a perfect win-win situation, but what you must not have is a perfect win-lose situation, because that will perpetuate the bad feelings, the hatred, the deep-seated historical issues that we have been dealing with. And it is only a matter of time. In the countries that have had serious problems, like our neighboring country, Rwanda, it was a cyclic little problem that went on and on and on and on.
Unaddressed.
Unaddressed.
Yeah.
And you keep sort of passing it on, thinking that somehow the problem will resolve itself. And then one day, it will blow up, and none of us will be in a position to control.
Which is definitely not a place anyone
God
wants
forbid,
to get to.
that is not a place we want to even imagine or think about moving towards.
Okay.
And so we must do something now and really very urgently. And it is not weakness for Raila to recognize that he has been a leader in this country with huge influence. President Uhuru Kenyatta has been our president for about 5 years. And he is going to get another term. Again, for him to say, right now, it is not about my Jubilee party. And Raila to say, it is not about my NASA coalition.
It's about the country.
Let us now think about a country called Kenya.
Okay, and that would be a perfect place for me to ask you, if you were to address the president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and I regard you as an elder in this society, what would you tell him?
I'll tell him that, Mr. President, I know that you love the country, and I want to give you a spiritual quote. One time, Jesus was talking to the masses, and in a spur of a moment, he said, what will it benefit you? It was the masses then. If you win the whole world and lose your soul. I can use a parallel here. They are not exactly the same. But I will tell my president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and Raila at the same time, that no power, contemplated or otherwise, real or imagined, is worth us losing that which we call our home, our country, Kenya.
Okay.
So in my view, the president really right now is on the upper side. He's on the stronger side. He needs to go out of his way. And when we talk of inclusion must not mean that because I have everybody across the country in my party, therefore there is inclusion. Because I hear that repeated argument where everybody says, we must be inclusive because everybody is in our party.
Okay, I need to wrap this up, but not before I also give you an opportunity to address NASA leader Raila Odinga, assuming he's listening to you.
My appeal to Honorable Raila Odinga, I want to just appeal to you that you have had a record, not just in East Africa, not just in Kenya, but all over the world, as an agent of democracy in the developing world. And that reputation can easily be lost by what we do in the next few months. I'm also calling on you, and by the same token, the President, to humble yourself and let us confront this matter without pretense, like a nation, like a country, and that we will find solution. And there are very many that can be put on the table. And again, this naive argument that you cannot share government or you cannot have what has now come to be stereotype. And I'm not talking about Nusu Mukate, I'm talking about the country. And I believe that philosophically, the country is enough for all of us. If indeed we believe that we all belong here, then it must not be impossible for us to do whatever we need to do to keep the country together so that we all belong, we all participate, we all celebrate Kenya.
That would be a very good place to end this conversation. Professor James Ole Kiapi saying we will find a solution. We all have to fit into this country one way or the other. Professor,
Yes.
thank you so much for your time, for speaking
You're
to us
welcome.
on KTN Prime. I guess this is a conversation that probably we need to push forward to help the country move forward and look for ways of having a unified nation as the days go by.
And I will add by saying this is not just about the president and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. This is all of us Kenyans. We need to carry the burden of,
40 million
of carrying one another. Because sometimes the fighting is not even at that level. Sometimes it is us who are very unreasonable. We don't even want to listen to each other. We think we understand what Uhuru is thinking, we understand what Raila is thinking, and that is how it must be. I think we all must carry one another as a nation.
Yeah, we all have to, trust me, we all have to carry each other and make sure
and
we
there's so
make
much,
it to the
there's so much work that needs to be done in this country.
And that work, we will have a conversation about it. Like I mentioned, this is not a conversation that ends here. Professor, thank you so much for your time. You're watching KTN Prime. Let me now take a break to pave way for the day's business news.